means I didn't use the shelf. So what we have now is the end key allows you to see what node was created by what tool or what Python script. Although I have to say that Ben Schreiber's up in Northern Europe, working at Guerrilla Games, working on Killzone 2, beat him to the punch by over a year, because Guerrilla Games had built their own dynamic Voronoi fracturing tools as well. And Voronoi fracturing means you use cell points or cell positions, like particles, and then you fracture all the objects based on those particles. And we even added clustering. We'll talk a little bit about clustering right now. This was one of the tests that was done in marketing. Yeah, not bad. And this is all done with dynamic fracturing. And as you can see, it says 37 seconds per frame on their machines. I got it down to about 15 online. Here's a castle battle scene that it seems we've been working on for quite some time, and we finally found a use for. This is destroying it. And if I just stop it for a second, scroll back a bit, dynamic fracturing seems to be a hot topic. A lot of other people seem to be doing it. Some of them are struggling with some of the tools. We've been doing this for quite some time, and whether or not you're doing this with our rigid body solver, or you've written your own bullet solver, or you've taken the bullet solver and built in a lot of the tools sort of following what our guideline is, you can see here that even though we have dynamic fracturing, we also have support for clustering. So random collections of, instead of just having it look like a bunch of chunks, we actually have lots of controls in that tool for you to determine the amount or the lack thereof of this clustering, so you can actually have bits and pieces going. And again, that can all be driven by attributes, and you can have other pieces clustered, some regions clustered less than more. And here's yet another picture of the dynamic fracture. You can see really well in this one that on the impact you can see how global that is. And it's really easy to just basically work with the radius. I think they use the tool at its defaults. It's really easy to just have just that area of fracture, so really easy to tune this tool. And here's actually John Lynch's one of his first tests when he got a hold of the Houdini 11U tools. And we had rewritten some of the core algorithms in C++ to get a lot faster work on the sim. And this one's using metaball objects as force fields. And this one's all off the shelf, believe it or not. If anybody's interested in getting a walkthrough through this, just email me and I can Skype me or whatever, and I can actually show you how to do this in like 10 minutes. It's pretty easy to do this stuff. And just recently I actually helped somebody shatter just the shell of a cave wall. They just wanted to shatter the first 2 inches of that wall. It was really easy. I just coated with points with a scatter, pulled them out a bit, and then just coated those points with metaballs just so that they barely penetrated the wall, fractured it, and sure enough, it worked right off the bat. I didn't even, first time out worked great. Another big thing that we've been working on is hardware rendering. And the whole idea behind that is not so much to generate a hybrid render, although Mantra can take advantage of if you happen to be able to run Houdini on a PlayStation, you take advantage of the cores on that. But but Mantra is pretty much ready to go. The rest of the software not so much at this point in time in Houdini 11. Either way, OpenGL, the experience has to be a lot better, and that's what we've done in Houdini 11. The shadows are great. They give you get a really good, solid approximation of what your lighting values in the scene are going to be, except on the Mac. And remember what I said, 2.6. Everybody works it out. So support for screen-based ambient occlusion is really good when you're starting to work with really detailed models, and you got dailies. It just adds that extra little bit of pop that might get your shot approved. I don't know. But anyway, here's a little bit of a video that was done by my colleague Rob McGee in marketing. And it's using pretty much the exact same setup that I had done with the flip fluid solver for my first waterfall. And they sort of captured the defaults and burnt it in. But this is covering more of the OpenGL experience in Houdini. And for those of you who want to know about the OpenGL effects, you hit the D key in the viewport, or you hit that, and you go to Effects. And if you don't like the layout and the display options, you can blame me. But I did reorganize it. I hate miscellaneous folders to pick up garbage. So we went through that all. I went through with the one developer one afternoon, we were just jabbering, and we fixed it all up, so it's a lot more sane. So you can blame me when you first fire up 11, you can't find any of those display options. But hopefully over time you'll see how nicely the layouts work. But anyway, this is just showing you the support for displacement and bump maps, specular. We're using CGCL shaders in the background. We haven't exposed any of that yet in Houdini 11, but we do support some really cool things in OpenGL, such as infinite amount of lights. The lighting in Houdini is, as I said, is very respective of the lighting that you would get in whatever renderer that you're using. So let me go on next. And this is yet some more of it again. So there's actually, we fixed a lot. We fixed a lot of the problems that people had submitted bugs for over 10 years. And it's the high dynamic range implementation of HDRI everywhere in Houdini that really has me interested in, because I can take volumes and I can now turn on HDRI rendering. So let me just go back into Houdini and see if I can follow this. So if you actually hit N, you'll know that's there. But anyway, I just got some expressions in here that just pick up the point number and automatically randomly scatter points as I copy them. And you can see that I can add as many lights as I want. And the nice thing about this as well, if I go into display options, go to effects, you can see that there's HDR rendering. So wait, it crashed awesome. And the Mac is, we're working. So HDR rendering works pretty well. It doesn't work on the Mac yet, but it works on Linux and PCs very nicely. And I'm telling you, if you're working with volume data, absolutely have to turn on HDR rendering and crank up the volume quality settings. You'll notice there's ambient occlusion shadows, and it's material shaders. If you want to know, if you're on a machine and you suddenly turn on material shaders and Houdini blows away, graphics card, because that's what's triggering on the use of the advanced rendering features. And just make sure you turn that off the next time and don't turn it on until there's a driver update or something. So. And for those of you who don't know Houdini, there's really, really cool lighting tools in here. One of which is smart bundles. So let me open up my bundle list. A bundle is just a collection of objects, and it actually records their paths as well. Houdini being a full-on path system, where all the nodes are organized inside of folders. And you can see here I got my lights, so I can select all my lights, and I can quickly turn down their intensity. Let's put 0.05. So, and this is a smart bundle, by the way. If I double click on it, you can see you can put a wildcard in it to aggregate all of your lights. Lots of cool stuff you can do with regards to lighting. So that's yet another hour, so I won't go there. Hardware rendering again, you can see infinite number of lights, lots of quality, lots of high, really hard to viewport. Here's an example of Mudbox Sculpt, bringing in exporting the Mudbox with the low-res poly and the high-res displacement map. We have full support for all of the drawing packages now, including PTEX. How many people here know what PTEX is? Awesome. Most people do. Excellent. I bet you just learned about PTEX not 3 months ago. Well, I knew about PTEX for years and years, but with non-disclosure couldn't say anything, but now PTEX is excellent. No more UVs. Well, it solves a couple problems, not all. Another thing we did is shader building. I've always had issues with VOPs. I still have a couple, but we're ironing out an awful lot of the workflow issues. I always never liked parameters parameter nodes because they were just too big. So now we have these cool thing called pegs. And another thing we have is we actually have, as you can see, it's not streamed on. You can read the things, but whatever. It works, and also one big thing is working with parameters from a VOP. You now get the actual edit op type interface, so you can actually arrange your parameters finally. And we support most of the options that you get with all the other digital assets, and customizing the UI of any node. And also interactive debugging tools, which is really cool. So you definitely want to take a look at the help for that. Shader effects, it's just a fancy name for something that you're used to in other applications, where we can now run little scripts on a parameter. And in this case, the scripts default to adding a texture map, a ramp, anti-alias noise to any parameter, and it adds the appropriate nodes feeding into that. And it makes wiring these shaders a heck of a lot faster. And the whole idea behind Houdini 11 is to move away from materials. Sorry, I know we've been pushing materials from 9 and 10, but we've backed off of that and we're unwinding it all. We're backward supporting it. But we decided to, and I always was a big fan of polluting VOP networks. So you'll see in a minute that, double clicking on a shader node now dives you into the VOP network, finally. And a smart parameter propagation up to the top, to the material level, because we know that that's a bit of a hassle. And yeah, I'll actually get a bit of that. And the lighting side. There was a big push in 11 on Mantra. And for those of you who know Mantra, it's a ray tracer, micropolygon renderer, and now a physically based renderer. And the physically based renderer saw a tremendous amount of work in Houdini 11. And it also, and some of the core tools that we had built a number of years ago, for instance, Point Cloud, the Point Cloud implementation in Houdini, which is used pretty much every day by serious Houdini artists, has seen a tremendous amount of improvements both in the geometry nodes as well as in rendering. We can now dynamically cull those points and only use certain subsets of that, control the filtering of them as well. We've added a lot more specialized lights for all three renderers. There's a portal light, we've added a sunlight, an indirect light, and an environment light. So hopefully we don't have to use the light template node and wrap in our own light shaders anymore. Or if you do, it'll be a very specialized case, hopefully. Another thing we did was make geometry area lights a lot easier to use. Basically, every light that you put down in Houdini now has a parameter called geometry. And you can pull in some geometry. And if you do that, the geometry will now emit light. And it will actually look at shader attributes of that object, as you can see here very clearly. There's an emissive attribute on all these materials, and all the department materials use this magic CE, and it stands for color emission. So as long as your VOP shader actually wires into that CE output, Mantra will know to use that as an emissive color, and lo and behold, it starts behaving like a light. This is pretty efficient in all three render engines as well. More features. So those are the 4 core features. There's a lot of other small features as well that we've implemented in Houdini. Again, there's that list that I told you about early on. Volumes. Volumes are huge. In Houdini 11, we were asked countless times, can you just take the tools that we have in the Dynamics engine, working with volumes, and make geometry nodes out of them? So that's exactly what we did. And now, holy mackerel. I don't know if you guys have watched my first old 2 school blogs the last 2 weeks about using volumes to collect visions. Well, that was actually done for a good friend of mine who works at Blue Sky right now. And they're doing really amazing stuff.